Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On with me, Giamo Mosipili. Africa's digital payments economy is expected to reach $1.5 trillion by the year 2030. And as the continent, in line with the rest of the globe, accelerates its digital transformation, trust and resilience through cybersecurity in the payments ecosystem has never been more important. Joining me for more on this is Johan Gerber, the MasterCard Global Head of Security Solutions, who will share insights on how MasterCard is working with governments, businesses, innovators to strengthen cyber resilience, protect payment ecosystems, and enable secure growth across Africa. So thanks so much for your time, and more importantly, welcome to the show. I briefly got into the importance of why Africa's digital economy is important and is on the rise, but I guess I'd like to circle back to your focal point. Why is cybersecurity so important in this space, and how instrumental is it to safeguarding Africa's economies?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having us. This is such an important topic for us. And in one word, it's all about opportunity, frankly. This is so important for us for growth. You know, security by design is a fundamental construct that you need for sustained growth across an economy. And I'll maybe just to illustrate this for you a little bit and give you some context. There are three very important data points here. First of all, Africa has the youngest population in the world. 60% of our population here is below the age of 25. In fact, the median age is like 19. So you've got a strong group of very young people. In fact, by 2035, there will be more Africans entering the workforce than the rest of the world combined. So you've got a very strong young upcoming workforce that are there. Second of all, internet connectivity has grown from about 30%, roughly about 30% back in 2020, to now already about 50%, 50. And it's currently growing at about 20% year over year. So this could almost double by within the next 5 years, which is a phenomenal area. Then if we look at payments, 90% of payments across the continent is still made in cash. So if you think about, you've got a strong workforce, you've got the strength of technology entering the continent with a vast opportunity. How do we maximize our ability as a continent to benefit from this technology advancements that are there and grabs those benefits for society to uplift the entire society out there? So if we don't put security in by design, you know, and the first entrant that you make into this economy is that of a scam or some sort of a cyber breach, then we may lose the trust of the people. So the trust is fundamental. And of course, this comes in addition to, we need to educate our workforce, you know, we need to make sure we care for them. We need government policy frameworks to allow innovation to happen. All of those things are important as well, but security is so important. And Africa is right on this cusp where we've got this wonderful opportunity ahead of us, and we want to make sure that sustained growth and benefit is there for the continent.
But going back to what you said about the trust and uplifting society, how important is financial inclusion in this space? And what are some of the efforts MasterCard is undertaking to ensure financial inclusion?
This is such a relevant question that you're asking there. I think this is the crux of it. You know, our youth brings wonderful opportunity with them. They also come with big expectations, right? So we need to make sure that those expectations can be met and these opportunities are there for them. And especially if the African continent wants to benefit from this, we need to provide these jobs, the training, so that they stay here and so that the continent can benefit from them. So I think these are all fundamentally really, really important pieces of this. When it comes to financial inclusion, you know, I've spent the last couple of days, well actually last week, in Cape Town and in Johannesburg meeting with several of our fintechs. These are folks who are making a real difference in bringing people into the digital economy. You know, how do I go to a spaza shop and I can take my cash and I can convert it in some sort of a digitized stored place where my money is safe? And now providing that trust at that time is fundamental, because without the trust, why would I trust somebody else to store my money? And then online security is another area that is critically important for us, because not only do I want people to be able to store their money in a place where it's safe and no robber can get to it, I want, when they want to use it, I need to make sure that that online security and safety is there for them to use this money as well. So both in terms of the entrance into the ecosystem, and then how do I use the ecosystem to transact now in a digital place, those are all part of financial inclusion for us. And you need to go across that spectrum. So, you know, we've invested about $11 billion in security for MasterCard across the globe. Things like cybersecurity. In fact, we acquired a company called Recorded Future very recently, who's all into threat intelligence and providing that security to allow us to understand what are the threat actors doing and how can we protect our ecosystem more safer. We're taking a lot of that intelligence to help our banks, financial institutions, fintechs, smaller companies. So it's a very critically important piece for us to get that right.
Yeah, I really want to circle back on the movements and the strides that has been made through fintechs towards financial and digital inclusion. And it's almost that often when it comes from a regulatory perspective, governance is almost playing catch up to how fast some of these movements are taking place. So from yourselves as a private sector player, what ways can government and institution come together to ensure there is a mutual standpoint to the dual goal, right, of integrating society and ensuring all Africans are economically active?
You need both public and private partnerships for this to flourish. If you look at this at the macro level, I would say private industry in the form of corporates, fintechs, startups, the entire range, we bring a lot of technology to the forefront, and these technologies can have a real impact on society. Government brings the scale as well as the policy frameworks to govern the rollout of these so that society actually benefits from this. And that's why you need both of these elements to be successful. One without the other one, it's not impossible for it to work. It will just take slower, it will take longer, it won't be as effective. So you really need both of them together. And within our company, especially with the B20 going on this week, of which we're a sponsor, we're a very big supporter of how do we come alongside government as a strategic partner. We want to benefit small and medium-sized enterprises. The SMEs represents globally 43% of GDP. Almost 90% of the workforce are employed by small businesses. It's such an important, you can almost argue that small businesses should be treated like critical infrastructure, if you really think of it that way, because it plays such a fundamental role in our growth. How do we collectively work together to empower? Who knows where is the next corporate coming from? They all start at the startup level until they grow up. So the role of both private and public partnerships is absolutely critical for us. We're investing a lot in that too. We'll work alongside government in a lot of places with all sorts of initiatives that we're busy with.
Yeah, I want to talk about AI, something that is, has been a disruptor across multiple sectors. Within the space, within the digital payments economy, what role is AI playing in other emerging technologies, more so to move the needle forward in terms of financial inclusion?
AI is a wonderful enabler. I mean, in terms of, and if you think about the role that AI plays, it allows innovators to start up companies faster than ever before in the history that we've been aware of. You can really start producing value much, much faster than ever before. You can do it with less resources and people power than you would in the past. So the driver of what this will do for us, innovation. But not only in innovation, there's for existing companies in terms of productivity, the productivity gains that are possible is tremendous. The educational properties that are here, the ability for generative AI to help people, even if they're illiterate, to get education. If I can speak into a phone device that can then teach me about certain topics, I want to learn about how to budget, I want to learn how to start a business, I want to know more about personal well-being. If I can speak to these agents and they can speak to me back, the benefit of it is to jump across so many of our traditional mechanisms out there. So AI is such an important piece for the continent. Also for companies like us, we employ AI. I personally have been involved in AI since the early 2000s. In 2004 is when I first got my first real true introduction into AI. We use it for things like fraud prevention. The company that we acquired, Recorded Future, for instance, they use AI to help fighting cybercrime. How do I create almost like an antibody in your body would go and find an infection and then try to work against it? We're looking at using AI in similar fashion. So AI is a wonderful thing in terms of driving change, but also in helping us to defend better. Both the attackers and the defenders need or will use AI. As defenders, I think that's a big part of our defense also.
Yeah, and Johan, I think you almost took the second point that I really wanted to explore with you. In this space where AI is moving quite rapidly, we could argue that it is a race between the good actors and the bad actors, and sometimes the perception is that the bad actors are making a bigger impact. So when we're speaking towards the widespread adoption of digital payments and just digital inclusion, how do we ensure that it is responsible, that it is ethical, and also just keeping up with the pace at which those with other intentions can't get to vulnerable people?
I mean, look, this is a very real threat. So let's start there. You know, there's in the United States, to give you an example, there are companies out there who provide services, what we call ethical hacking almost. Well, almost that's what it is. So there are companies there that offers this as a service or competitions between different ethical hackers. The number one hacker on the leading boards of these companies today are all autonomous bots. So the threat actors can use AI to penetrate companies at scale. That is a big threat against especially the small businesses. You know, if I don't know how to defend myself and I'm up against a very sophisticated AI bot, it's going to be a struggle. And that's why I think this is so important for us. So, but as I say that, I'm an optimist when it comes to this, because AI in the hands of us as defenders can really help us. Goes a little bit back to our public-private partnerships. We have the tech. With the help of government, we can get into the hands of small businesses to really protect themselves. So I think there's a lot we can do there. I'll give you a quick few things that we do right now. We work with governments as well as with NGOs all across the world to help educate and to bring some of these tools to all sorts of businesses across the continent. There's an alliance that we're part of, which is called the Mobilization for Digital Access to the Digital Economy, MADE. On that initiative, we are looking to bring 100 million people into the digital economy within the next decade. As part of our community pass, which is something that we use for communities, provide them with access, we're looking at increasing that to about 15 million over the next 5 years. So that's one of the initiatives. Remittances, you know, that's $100 billion opportunity. The Africa diaspora, if you look at the numbers, is estimated somewhere between 200 and 350 million, depending on how we count people from African descent. That is a real thing. How do we help them to move money across, you know, people who work in other countries, migrate money back to support their families? That's a very real use case in Africa. We're playing a very big role in that kind of technology, and then startups as well. So there's a fair amount that we do in this space.
Certainly, and I think it's so important, as you've highlighted, that Africa's resilience and growth is a two-pronged approach, and we need an all-hands-on-deck approach to ensure we meet some of those metrics and make some of those strides. But that's unfortunately all that I have time for, and that's how we wrap up this episode of Focus On. Thank you so much to my guest who has joined me in studio, Johan Gerber, MasterCard's Global Head of Security Solutions. From me, Giamo Mosapile, and the rest of the CNBC Africa team, it's goodbye for now.